What's up, everyone? Welcome back. This episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the GT, what makes it different, the pros, cons, and my just honest opinion on how it rides so far, now that I've got a decent more mileage under my belt. All right, first things first, there's a lot of negativity going around, and I think that just comes down to all the more hardcore riders that are looking for the maximum potential out of the board. So straight on, I'm going to say, if you're a newer rider, or you're just kind of like you just take it for a spin, you enjoy it, you take it casually, and you're not pushing the board to the limits, I think you're going to love the board. But right here, you're going to see I'm about to take a pretty hard decline. I go a little bit too far to the left, so I have to kind of go around. But the board, it for anyone who's just riding just for the fun of it, it's a really fun ride. I really, truly believe that. But the problem is, like, with the tire, it's a bit wobbly when you're hitting rocks and stuff, because it's a very, very hard compound, probably because they're trying to keep the life of the tire to last a lot longer. But yeah, and the issue with the rim size, now that the rim is I think it's wider, there's less space for the air, so you can't really air it out down too low. And it makes, I've already got a few chips on my rims from just hitting a lot of chunk. So this board doesn't like chunk as much, and right here I'm kind of showing that this is a very, very steep climb. You can't really see it on the 360 camera, but I'm about to hit this, and this is one of the exciting things about the GT, is that there's all these hills that you can kind of get up, but then you gotta walk, or you gotta hit perfectly in the XR. But I don't get much speed here, and I'm able to clear it relatively easily. But yeah, and so the tire, it's a little bit boatier. Turns aren't as tight, but it does feel quite stable for the most part. And out of the box for an XR, you can see I just cleared the hill no problem. Which it just feels really cool, the more you're able to do that. But yeah, the tire, it actually feels quite good, out of the box, because if you've ever ridden a stock Vega, it can be quite painful to get that first few hundred miles to round that tire out. But this tire, really the only issue here is it doesn't turn quite as tight, and it can bounce quite a bit. I'm running at 10 PSI here, and I feel that the 10 PSI is the good spot to be in to really absorb the impact of a lot of these wobbles and stuff, and all this gnar that's there. And this is kind of all just first take, me just saying my thoughts about it as we're going on. I think hopefully when we work in the tire more, it's going to be a better ride. But I started experimenting with flow, and with the flow setting, it seems that it's bouncing less crazy on the chunk, which is nice, and it really feels like that mission feel that we all know and love. But the problem with flow is it pushes back at 17 for some reason, even though it says 20 miles an hour on the app. So it's a bit of a bummer, but the flow is a really fun way to ride. But Highline right now seems like it pushes back much higher, around 19, 20 miles an hour. So I generally feel like Highline's the way to do it if you're looking for speed. But I do like that you can really press in on the board while you're accelerating, while you're going uphill, all this kind of stuff. It just makes it so much more fun, and you're being able to send it constantly, because a lot of people don't live on crazy downhill trails to where you need to hit 25. And so for a rider like me, it can be frustrating because you're capped out at 20 to 21, but I'm trying to stay positive and look at the upsides of this new board that we have, and it rides and whips right out of the box. It's great. So the biggest issues are the tire and the pushback. And the pushback hits kind of like a pint style pushback. It's pretty strong. It's just a little bit boaty and a little bit too bouncy, I would say. And it doesn't really absorb, impact that well. And that's why you got to drop it so low. But the pushback is aggressive in flow, less aggressive in Highline. And in Highline, you can push it pretty far. There's not that many points to where I'm getting to, I think I've hit 21 so far. And I think Highline lets you push through it a little bit more into 20-ish, and then it starts to really push back on you. But I'm still experimenting with that. But I would say if flow let me go faster, I would ride flow more often. So let's talk about the love hump, the pads, the front and back. I feel like it contours to my foot perfectly. I don't really feel a lot of foot fatigue, but I haven't ridden on the street much. So I don't know what the foot fatigue on the street's gonna feel like, but front and back are concaved in this kind of non-aggressive way. I feel like they did it just right. So I have really nothing to complain there. But like, to kind of recap on like overall how I feel like it rips and it rides super great. And then like the downsides of the tire can be outweighed by how cool these new settings on the board are that you can use, these new shaping modes. The board rips, the torque is just like another way of riding. It's like you just get used, you got to get used to it first, because it can be kind of sketchy learning the board because the tire doesn't act the same way as you think it would. But once you start to learn it and dial it in, it's so much fun, and you can really trust it on the uphills. You can just lean into it, and I like the little beeps that it gives me, so then when I know I'm like pushing the torque limit, and that's like when you're like really accelerating into like a turn or accelerating into like a straightaway, it'll beep if you're pushing the torque too hard, you know, to where like, I'm sure you all have had that early on nosedive when you're just starting to get up to speed, and then this thing you could just kind of lean into it. And so, you know, like so far I've really enjoyed it. I'm staying positive about it, but I know there's downsides, and I would say the biggest downsides are the pushback and the tire. And other than that, I'm just having so much fun. I'm just having a blast focusing on the positives for now, and then hopefully they get all the feedback and they change and fix some of these issues.